How to become a people magnet. Curious. Imagine walking into a room full of strangers. Some people spend years perfecting their elevator pitch, polishing their jokes, or practicing their posture to command attention. Yet, within 30 seconds, the room imperceptibly shifts towards someone else entirely. Someone who isn't speaking the loudest, isn't wearing the flashiest clothes, and isn't trying to sell anything at all. Thoughtful. Why? What is the invisible force pulling people toward certain individuals while others, despite their intellect and effort, remain virtually unseen? For decades, we've been told that charisma is an innate talent, a genetic lottery prize reserved for natural extroverts. But neuroscience and behavioral psychology tell a radically different story. Human beings are constantly transmitting and receiving hidden emotional signals. Before a single word is spoken, your brain's mirror neurons are actively mapping the emotional state of the person across from you. Magnetism is not a performance. It is a physiological resonance. When you learn how to regulate your own internal state and genuinely tune into the emotional frequency of others, you unlock a dynamic that human nature cannot resist: the deep biological need to be understood. Most people navigate their daily lives feeling partially ignored, constantly evaluated, or subtly dismissed. When you become the rare person who offers authentic presence and emotional attunement, you don't have to chase attention. People will naturally seek you out. Over the next few minutes, we are going to deconstruct the exact psychological mechanics behind this phenomenon. You will learn why conventional networking advice often backfires, how subtle shifts in your emotional awareness can instantly change how others perceive you, and how to master the art of becoming effortlessly magnetic in every area of your life. Stay tuned, because by the end of this talk, you will hold the key to transforming every interaction you ever have. Magnetism isn't born from extroversion or charm. It is driven by emotional intelligence, EQ, specifically how attuned you are to others' unspoken emotional states. True presence requires turning down internal self-chatter to deeply perceive and validate what others are feeling in real time. Emotions are physiologically contagious. When you master calm, authentic warmth, people naturally gravitate toward your emotional orbit. Magnetic individuals move past simple active listening to cognitive and emotional empathy, making people feel genuinely understood, not just heard. Sustainable attraction happens when your outer interactions align seamlessly with your inner self-awareness, building deep trust effortlessly. When we analyze the nature of charisma and personal draw, our cultural intuition often points us in the wrong direction. We tend to attribute magnetic pull to visible, performative traits and booming voice, quick-witted humor, boundless physical energy, or an imposing physical presence. Yet social neuroscience reveals a far more subtle reality. True human attraction is governed by an invisible emotional currency. Magnetism is rarely about what an individual actively projects outward. Rather, it is determined by their level of emotional intelligence, specifically their capacity to perceive, decode, and harmonize with the unspoken emotional states of those around them. At the cellular level, our brains are perpetually engaged in a process of mutual social monitoring. Through specialized neural pathways, most notably mirror neuron systems, we are constantly sensing the physiological and emotional climate of the people in our immediate environment. When you enter a room or sit down for a conversation, your nervous system is actively broadcasting signals regarding your internal state. If your mind is cluttered with self-consciousness, strategic ambition, or latent anxiety, others instinctively register that underlying friction. They may not be able to articulate why, but they will feel a subtle impulse to keep their guard up. Conversely, when an individual possesses high emotional intelligence, they operate with a refined internal sensor. They are able to quiet their own mental noise long enough to notice the micro expressions, shifts in posture, and vocal inflections that reveal how another person is actually feeling. This level of emotional attunement acts as a powerful psychological mechanism. In a world where most individuals are preoccupied with their own internal monologue, constantly calculating what to say next, how to appear smart, or how to control the narrative, encountering someone who is genuinely attuned feels exceedingly rare. That feeling of being deeply perceived without judgment triggers a biological sense of safety and relief. It satisfies a core human requirement that operates far below our conscious awareness, the fundamental need for emotional resonance and validation. Therefore, the currency of magnetism is not built on extroversion or performative charm, but on the depth of your perceptiveness. When you raise your emotional intelligence, you shift your primary focus from being interesting to being interested, and from trying to impress others to actively understanding them. You stop viewing social interactions as opportunities to showcase your personality and begin viewing them as shared emotional landscapes to navigate with care. The paradox of true magnetism is that the less you worry about drawing attention to yourself, and the more you dedicate your cognitive energy toward tuning into the emotional frequencies of others, the more irresistible your presence becomes. People naturally gravitate toward environments where they feel safe, seen, and valued, making emotional attunement the ultimate foundation of lasting human connection. Attunement is far more than a passive state of listening. It is an active, highly refined psychological practice that serves as a cornerstone of genuine influence and connection. To truly attune to another person, you must first master the art of turning down your own internal dialogue, that relentless background noise of judgments, preoccupations, and the constant preparation of what you intend to say next. Most people enter conversations carrying a heavy cognitive load, viewing the interaction as a platform to perform, convince, or defend their own point of view. When two people engage in this state, they are not actually connecting. They are simply taking turns delivering competing monologues. Attunement requires breaking this cycle by deliberately shifting your focus away from your own internal state and placing it entirely onto the person in front of you. This requires a level of self-regulation that allows you to set aside your personal agenda, even temporarily, to make space for someone else's reality. When you cultivate this depth of presence, your awareness expands to notice the subtle nonverbal cues that standard conversation ignores, the slight tightening around the eyes, the subtle drop in vocal pitch, the hesitation before a response, or the shift in body language that signals discomfort or enthusiasm. These microsignals represent the true emotional narrative underlying the spoken words. By perceiving these unspoken states, you move beyond surface-level conversation and begin engaging with what the person is actually experiencing in real time. The profound impact of this practice lies in how rare it has become in modern life. We live in an era characterized by fragmented attention and perpetual distraction, where most individuals navigate their days feeling partially observed and subtly dismissed. When someone encounters an individual who offers undivided, unhurried attention, the psychological effect is immediate and powerful. It creates an environment of deep emotional safety, signaling to the other person's nervous system that they are fully seen and valued in that moment. This process does not require you to agree with everything the other person expresses, nor does it demand that you fix their problems or offer unsolicited advice. Instead, it relies on the simple, potent act of validation, acknowledging their emotional reality as legitimate and worthy of your full attention. As this real-time attunement deepens, it establishes a powerful psychological rapport that standard social tactics can never replicate. People are naturally drawn to those who provide a sense of calm, focused clarity, making real-time attunement one of the most effective and transformative abilities an individual can develop in any social dynamic. The phenomenon of emotional contagion is one of the most fundamental yet overlooked mechanics governing human relationships. At its core, emotional contagion refers to our hardwired physiological tendency to automatically mimic and synchronize our expressions, vocal tones, postures, and emotional states with those of the people around us. This is not a conscious choice or a deliberate social strategy. It is a biological process driven by the brain's mirror neuron system, designed by evolution to foster group cohesion and rapid communication of safety or threat. Because our nervous systems are perpetually reading and absorbing the emotional climates of those in our immediate environment, emotions spread through a room much like an invisible wave. When an individual enters a space carrying unexamined anxiety, hidden irritability, or desperate need for approval, that internal tension radiates outward through subtle nonverbal channels, causing others to unconsciously tense up and pull away. Conversely, an individual who has cultivated deep internal calm, emotional stability, and authentic warmth acts as a powerful stabilizing force. Their steady physiological state projects an undeniable sense of emotional safety that invites those around them to drop their guards and settle into a state of ease. Mastering this dynamic requires recognizing that you are always broadcasting an emotional signal, whether you intend to or not. Magnetic individuals do not rely on loud displays of charisma or theatrical enthusiasm to command a room. Instead, they focus on regulating their own internal state before they ever step into a social interaction. They understand that if they wish to project warmth, openness, and confidence, those qualities must first exist authentically within their own mind and body. When you learn to settle your own nervous system, managing your stress responses and grounding yourself in genuine presence, you create an inviting emotional orbit. People are naturally drawn to environments and individuals that offer psychological relief from the frantic noise of daily life. In a world saturated with stress and hyperreactivity, an emotionally grounded individual becomes a rare anchor point. When others are near someone whose emotional baseline is steady and welcoming, their own mirror neurons register that stability, signaling to their brain that it is safe to connect, trust, and open up. This effortless transfer of calm and warmth forms the bedrock of true magnetic influence, demonstrating that the emotional state you cultivate within yourself directly dictates the quality of the connections you draw from the world around you. To understand the transformative power of empathy in human connection, we must first dismantle the common misconception that listening alone is sufficient to build deep rapport. Conventional wisdom often emphasizes active listening, nodding, maintaining eye contact, and repeating backwards as the ultimate tool for interpersonal success. However, when these techniques are executed mechanically without true emotional depth, they frequently feel formulaic, transactional, or even manipulative. Magnetic individuals recognize that genuine connection requires moving past superficial listening techniques and stepping fully into both cognitive and emotional empathy. Cognitive empathy involves the intellectual capacity to take another person's perspective, to accurately construct a mental model of how they see the world, and to comprehend the logical framework underlying their decisions and beliefs. Emotional empathy, on the other hand, goes a step deeper. It is the capacity to physically and psychologically resonate with the feelings another person is experiencing in the moment. When these two dimensions of empathy work in harmony, they transform a standard conversation into an act of profound validation. Most people go through their daily lives longing for a sense of true understanding, yet they are routinely met with premature advice, invalidation, or polite indifference. When someone shares a challenge, the typical response is to offer immediate solutions, share a similar personal story, or downplay the difficulty of the situation. While usually well-intentioned, these responses redirect the focus back onto the listener or dismiss the speaker's internal experience. Deep empathy operates in the exact opposite manner. It requires you to set aside the urge to fix, judge, or steer the conversation, choosing instead to sit with the individual in their current reality. It means acknowledging not just the factual details of what they are saying, but the underlying emotional weight attached to those facts. When you communicate to someone that you truly grasp both the circumstances they are facing and the emotional burden those circumstances carry, a profound shift occurs in the dynamic. The other person experiences a release of psychological tension, feeling recognized at a fundamental level. This level of understanding goes far beyond simply hearing words. It is the process of making someone feel genuinely seen and validated in their subjective experience. This depth of empathetic engagement is what separates temporary social appeal from enduring personal influence. When people realize that you possess the rare capacity to understand their inner landscape without projecting your own ego or attempting to alter their feelings, they instinctively develop a deep sense of trust and safety in your presence. Empathy, when practiced with this degree of intention and sincerity, ceases to be a mere communication tactic and becomes an irresistible force of attraction, drawing people toward the comfort and clarity of your perspective. The ultimate foundation of sustainable human attraction lies in the seamless alignment between your inner self-awareness and your outward interactions. Many people attempt to cultivate magnetism from the outside in, treating personal influence as a set of calculated behaviors, rehearsed expressions, or strategic social tactics designed to manage how they are perceived. However, when there is a mismatch between what an individual presents on the surface and what they are experiencing internally, the human brain detects the incongruity instantly. Subtle cues, a micro-expression that fails to match a smile, a slight hesitation in vocal tone, or a rigid posture, signal to others that something is performative or ungenuine. This subtle dissonance triggers an instinctive caution in those around you, eroding trust before a real connection can even begin. True lasting influence cannot be manufactured through superficial charm. It must emerge naturally from authentic self-awareness and emotional integrity. When you possess a clear, grounded understanding of your own values, emotional triggers, and internal state, you no longer need to rely on social strategy or defensive posturing. You enter conversations without the desperate need for external approval or the compulsion to project an idealized image. This internal clarity creates a profound sense of authenticity that is instantly recognizable to others. Authentic influence operates on the principle that trust is built when your nonverbal signals, spoken words, and internal disposition all broadcast the same unified message. When an individual is genuinely comfortable in their own skin, their calm self-assurance projects a powerful sense of stability and reliability. People are naturally drawn to those whose outer presence reflects their inner reality, because consistency creates a safe psychological environment where others can drop their own guards and speak openly. In a social landscape often dominated by superficial networking and self-promotion, an individual who interacts with transparent sincerity stands out dramatically. Furthermore, authentic influence does not mean displaying every internal emotion without filter. Rather, it means managing your emotional state with maturity while remaining completely honest in your intent. It is the practice of standing firmly in your own identity while remaining entirely open and curious about the inner worlds of others. When your interactions are driven by a genuine desire to connect, rather than a desire to control or impress. Your presence becomes effortlessly compelling. People instinctively seek out and remain loyal to those who offer unvarnished authenticity, proving that true magnetism is ultimately an act of alignment, where who you are on the inside perfectly matches how you show up for the world.